Welcome to Kaleidoscope S4IG. Let's talk. The 2022 Gallup poll on the state of the global workplace found that 60% of people are feeling emotionally detached at work, with only 33% feeling engaged. With work invading our home lives thanks to COVID-19, the gap between the professional and personal seems to be closing in. Now, does that mean there is no room for empathy in the world of work? On today's S4IG Let's Talk, we have Mimi Nicklin, the international best-selling author of Softening the Edge, who also is the host of the podcasts Empathy for Breakfast and Secrets of the Gap. She is the founder of Empathy Everywhere, the world's first empathy platform, and is the CEO of the world's most free advertising agency, Freedom. Welcome to Kaleidoscope's Let's Talk. You know, in the world of work, it's unusual to say the least, but where does the concept of empathy get into the recipe of work? What actually inspired you to get into this?
When I started on this path, it was 2019. I had just got my publishing deal, actually, of my book. And I always remember that I called my mother, who is very British, and I said, "Mum, someone's going to publish my book on empathy." And she said, "Well, darling, that's wonderful, but who wants to read a book about empathy?" I was like, "Well, thanks, Mum." But she was right, because it was a very unusual conversation. At that time, just 3 years ago, no one was talking about this. But the more passionate I became and the more the world changed, the more this conversation has risen. So if you look at 2020, and it wasn't just COVID, it was the American elections. Joe Biden won with 2 words. One was unity, the other was empathy. As I have grown in my passion to share empathy into the working world and into society, the conversation has risen, not because of me, but alongside me, right, in terms of the world. And now if you look up empathy and anything, empathy in the corporate world, empathy education, empathy in the media, you will find a host of conversations.
So something interesting I found in the book is the empathy gap. What is an empathy gap?
The empathy gap actually was first defined by Barack Obama in 2006. He stood up and addressed his audience, and he said, "I know we should be talking about our federal deficit, but I think we should be talking about our empathy deficit." That was around 16 years ago. We did very little with this conversation since then. But what he was referring to, and when I talk in the book about the empathy gap, it is that distance between us as human beings. When empathy is low, all of the isms are high. And what I mean by that, whether that's racism, ageism, sexism, any ism, okay? Because empathy is the ability, the skill set, it's not an emotion, to understand each other, to perspective take. And of course, in such turbulent times, the way our world is today, we are seeing more and more people fragmented, segregated, lonely. So the empathy gap is that gap between us in understanding, which means that we become more isolated, and we see things like racism, ageism increasing because we no longer understand each other as human beings.
So in the world of work, there are fine lines that a naked eye cannot see all the time. In that context, how do you practice empathy in the world of work?
When we have small children, you know, we constantly tell them, listen to auntie, listen to mummy, listen to daddy. And then as we grow, we stop reminding each other, we stop teaching it. We don't teach it in school, we don't teach it in university, we're certainly not teaching it in workplaces. So we're living in silos. And because of that, we're only ever getting access to a tiny percentage of the insight or data that other people could be adding to your decision making, your growth strategy, your profit. So fundamentally, if we can improve our listening in the workplace, we can improve communication, collaboration, motivation, and also hard indicators like output per capita, profitability, these type of measures in the workplace.
In work and in life, I just realized that there's no space for empathy. We just don't have the time. How can we change our ways then?
What you're tapping into there is a really powerful insight, because empathy has 2 enemies. One is low time and the other is high stress. And as you touched on there, that is the way of the world. We're all stressed and we're all low on time. Fundamentally, we're talking about intention. To listen just involves taking a moment to listen. There are skill sets that we can use to aid that. For example, eye contact. When you make eye contact with someone, the person feels that they're listening. They share more insight. They share more data. Body language. How you sit and absorb communication with people. How you address people around a boardroom table. I don't have time in a 45-minute keynote to empathize with every person, but I do make an intentional shift in my body language, in the way I communicate, to adapt what I say and how I say to the audience that needs to receive it.
Mimi, I just hope your message goes out loud and clear to everyone, really, all of humanity. This world would be a better place. A massive thank you to our great partners, Skills for Inclusive Growth at Australian Aid, Srilanka Life, CDB, The Daily Morning and Made by Her. If you like Kaleidoscope, subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn.